Most places in the Western world have now gone a full month without at the very least access to the Mass. In some places, we've gone at least that long without access to the sacrament of penance, aka confession, and even worse than that, without access to the last rites and end-of-life comfort that only a priest can really offer. It's astonishing to consider our situation in the current crisis. While on the one hand, a great number of evils in the world have ceased, and that is definitely to be celebrated, on the other hand, without access to the sacraments, a great many souls almost certainly have been lost. In some places, the shutdowns of the sacraments have come explicitly at the order of the government, with priests and parishioners being ticketed for attending the Mass in their cars in parking lots and open fields. Many of us are beginning to wonder if we've woken up in a police state due to this overreaction and the overreaction we've been seeing in other areas of life as well. One only needs to look to the governor of Michigan and her overreaction to the current crisis, with her alleged vice presidential candidate aspirations, making this a truly astonishing thing to behold up there. But for some Catholics, especially older Catholics living in Eastern and Central Europe, this is all eerily familiar. If you feel like you've woken up either in an alternative reality where the Church has been shut down by the agents of a global totalitarian political system, you're not alone. Our story today comes from CatholicNews.com, where we'll get some confirmation for those quiet fears that we all have. The story will sound familiar to you. Have you detected a rise of anti-Catholic and anti-Christian feelings broadly from our wonderful rulers and their dupes among the opinion makers? Have you seen the vicious turn to authoritarianism by some of those in uniform who in the past would have not even seemed like the type to abuse their authority in the slightest? The answer is probably yes. I've seen it. My state is one of the few in the U.S. not completely having locked everything down. So, again, from CatholicNews.com. Headline, East European Catholics have drawn lockdown parallels with communist rule. It's written by a character calling himself Jonathan Luxmore, and he apparently writes for the Catholic News Service. We won't hold that against him. See if this sounds familiar. Quote, sensitivities over church closures have also surfaced in Western Europe, where some Catholics have questioned the right of civil authorities to prohibit religious worship. The terrifying vision of empty churches shows how it might have been if past anti-Catholic hostilities had prevailed, said Polish radio presenter Malgorzata. I'm not going to butcher the rest of his name. There hasn't been any great resistance since these measures have been ordered by a government seen as sympathetic to the faith, with acceptance by church leaders. But we've never been barred from churches before, even in periods of persecution. And it's doubtful the curbs would have been accepted so easily if a more anti-clerical government had been in power. End quote. Yes, the politicians in Eastern Europe are seen as sympathetic to the faith. I mean, you've probably seen some of the news about what the kind of actions they're taking there. And they're the ones ordering the shutdowns too, in spite of their past support for the church in the public sphere. It's almost as if secular rulers cannot be trusted to at least not impose a one-size-fits-all approach that, in the end, leads to the sacraments being denied. My great hope in this is that when we emerge on the other side, we'll be far less trusting of secular rulers in these lodge-inspired political systems. But continuing with that story, quote, that figure whose name I didn't want to butcher before spoke as Easter season masses and liturgies were live-streamed, and the Polish Bishops' Conference president, Archbishop Stanislaw Gadecki, urged Catholics in an April 12th message to see the crisis as a chance for, quote, social change that really serves the human person. The reporter told the Catholic News Service April 13th that many Polish Catholics have been surprised and shocked by current restrictions, but had readily participated in virtual services via the internet. However, Polish media said police had dispersed parishioners from several churches and fined priests for not enforcing rules limiting Mass attendance to 5, fueling sensitivities in the traditionally Catholic country. End quote. So in Poland, you can go to Mass if they only let 5 people in. I'm assuming that counts everyone serving at the altar, by the way. Now, one bishop is likening this situation of the church in Poland under communist rule. He compared the lack of public Mass, the closing of parishes and denial of the sacraments, and clandestine gatherings that we're hearing about more and more, to the rule of the tools of the USSR during the Cold War. It's almost as if authoritarian tendencies among political elites of a certain ideological stripe never really go away, and that even those who are allegedly sympathetic with the position of the faith and the Catholic Church as an institution in the world today are susceptible to having their thinking corrupted in times of crisis. I know, some people immediately ask, are you saying everyone should go to Mass and risk passing the affliction to everyone around you? And no, I'm not suggesting that either. But I do believe this is a chastisement, and in times of chastisement you should be praying more and being at Mass more. And I fear that this is the start of a much larger chastisement. And I say fear because I do fear the loss of souls who are not prepared. And I can tell you that without access to at least confession and last rites, many of us won't make it through this. I'm blessed to be able to go to confession, at least for the time being, but many people in many places are not blessed in that way. Case in point, a little closer to home for most watching this, is the state of New Jersey, where Cardinal Joseph Nighty Night Tobin has shut down all the sacraments indefinitely. I'm certain that there are diocesan priests who are surreptitiously ignoring his order, and I'd not be surprised if the SSPX in that state are very busy at the moment doing the job of the Church by living up to the mandate of the 20th chapter of St. John's Gospel, by absolving people of their sins, which did not come with the caveat of, unless it's dangerous to do so, or unless the government tells you to stop. I frame it that way because, as it turns out, Cardinal Nighty Night Tobin was listening to the request of the governor of his state, Phil Murphy, who went on to Tucker Carlson's show and admitted that he was the one behind the closure of the public sacraments. Tucker frankly didn't grill him hard enough on that topic. I'd play you a clip, but it's absolutely copyrighted by the parent network, and I don't feel like taking a week or more to get it cleared for fair use, which is rarely enforced fairly anyway. So I'll be referring instead to the LifeSite article on this. And yes, I did watch the clip firsthand. Headline from LifeSite. Dem governor tells Tucker Carlson how he worked closely with top U.S. cardinal to ban sacraments. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy revealed the phone conversations he had with Cardinal Joseph Tobin. The story was penned by Margaret Berger for LifeSite. Murphy went on Tucker's show to reveal that he worked closely with Cardinal Tobin to have the sacraments shut down during the crisis, and got Tobin to comply when he quote-unquote called him up. Wonderful. Quoting the article, quote, I said, listen, I'm really concerned about drive-through Holy Communion because we had heard some stories about priests who unwittingly had the thing that should not be and unwittingly passed it on to parishioners, Murphy recounted. Murphy made his remarks in the context of talking about having to confer with attorneys for everything, but how he was able to simply and unbureaucratically call up the cardinal. According to Murphy, Tobin declared, we're not doing that, I promise you. And I'll confirm that with my fellow bishops. End quote. In other words, the governor didn't even bother to work with his lawyers on this and decided that he had the authority to decide who can and cannot worship where and when they choose in the U.S., and Tobin went along with this. Remember, folks, this isn't only about the Mass being shut down, but this is also about all the sacraments being denied in that state. At the request of a politician who probably isn't even Catholic anyway, and Tobin didn't even resist. At all. He went along with it. But it gets better. Tucker reminded the dictator of New Jersey that Americans have this constitutional guarantee, the right to worship freely. Quote, at one point in the interview, Carlson asked Murphy by what authority he nullified the Bill of Rights that allows Americans to practice their religion as they see fit and to congregate together, to assemble peacefully. Murphy responded, that's above my pay grade, Tucker, so I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this. Asked about why liquor stores, as opposed to churches, are not affected by the current crisis and allowed to stay open, the governor argued that shutting down liquor stores would have led to unintended mental health and addiction prices to pay, unintended consequences. He then emphasized that he had spoken to Cardinal Tobin, to the leaders of the Jewish community and of the Muslim community. People are at peace where we have come out there, the governor said. No one's happy. Everyone wants to get back to what they think of as the norm, and who could blame them? I want to do that as well. End quote. So let me see if I have this straight. Without access to liquor and presumably other controlled substances that are legal in that state, people will have mental health issues with unintended consequences, but denying access to the sacraments won't. Cardinal Tobin thought it was wise to go along with the dictates of a politician who probably doesn't share our beliefs anyway. Wonderful. But the best part was that the governor didn't even consult the U.S. Constitution. He just did what he did and so far hasn't been held to account for it. It's almost as if the U.S. Constitution gets scrapped in times of crisis, and that we shouldn't put our faith in secular pieces of paper. Go figure. Now, the U.S. Department of Justice has signaled that they will look into overbearing reactions by some governors to the current crisis. And frankly, I'll believe it when I see it, to be honest, and that's not a statement that's meant to be critical of the current administration. It's just a reality. They all have their hands full right now investigating deep institutional corruption, and attempted legal coups of the political system, on top of the usual workload they have to deal with. I can't imagine them ever getting around to dealing with would-be tin-pot dictators trying to destroy the lives of their own population through their overreach. But again, I could be wrong. I actually really hope I am in this one. As for Poland, I have greater faith that the Poles will persevere through this storm. I do share the concerns of many of you that when the Mass is publicly restored, many won't return to it, feeling better about sleeping in on Sunday and just embracing that heresy that is rampant in our day, of a sort of quasi-deism meets Protestantism, where going to church doesn't matter because God is a nice guy who doesn't do much in our lives, really, but likes to make you feel good with your prayers. That is what I fear, not because I'm afraid for my own life, but because I do fear the loss of souls. Eyes on the prize, people. We all have a job to do these days, and that includes helping people stay on the straight and narrow road. Now, what do you think about this? Late last week, the state of Texas announced that they'll be doing a phased reopening of things in general, beginning very soon. So maybe the end is in sight for this mess, unless the fearmongers on TV are right. But we are living in a burgeoning police state, or is this just the result of a few bad apples with far too much authority? Let me know in the comments, please. Keep praying for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.